Hello everyone, been a while since I've spoken about another show on this channel besides The Walking Dead, due to either time constraints or just the fact that those videos don't get many views, but screw it, I really liked Invincible and I want to talk about it, so here we are. This video does contain spoilers for the entire season and I would highly recommend watching at least the first episode of Invincible first before watching this video, simply because the ending to the first episode is pretty insane and you don't want that ruined for you. So this is my final warning. Stop the video now if you don't want the show spoiled. Okay, I think I've given you enough warning, so without further ado, let's begin. Invincible is a bloody good time, pun intended. The show is based on the Robert Kirkman comic of the same name, and it follows Steven Yeun as the main character Mark Grayson, a teenager who is just starting to develop the superpowers that he's inherited from his alien father Omniman. And yes, just like The Walking Dead, Steven Yeun's character gets his face smashed to pieces. I swear Kirkman just has a fetish for beating the shit out of every character that this guy plays. Stop the Asian hatred, Kirkman, you racist. Anyway, the first 35 to 40 minutes of Invincible could almost be described as your standard comic superhero affair. I was actually shocked to see that the first episode was rated 18. I mean, there is a bit of blood and gore during the opening battle, but the rest of the episode just seemed like a standard Saturday morning superhero cartoon. And that's not a criticism, I was enjoying it, but I was wondering if the 18+ rating on Amazon was some kind of mistake. Then the ending came. Jesus Christ. So Omniman gathers all the members of the Guardians of the World at their headquarters, and for context, the Guardians of the World are basically Invincible's version of the Justice League or the Avengers. They are the good guys, and Omniman kills every single one. Yeah, that's right, he wipes out the entire team, and the way he does it is fucking brutal. He pops Red Rush's skull, similar to how Oberyn Martell was killed on Game of Thrones. He punches Green Ghost so hard his fist goes through her head, and he snaps War Woman's neck, leaving her facing her own behind, choking on her own blood. Honestly, I was just in shock when I saw it. Imagine if in The Boys, Homelander rounded up all the members of the Seven and just slaughtered them all. That's what this was like. Whereas The Boys is still slowly taking its time building up to the moment that Homelander inevitably snaps, Invincible did it with Omni-Man in the first episode. Now, I'm not saying that because of that Invincible is better than The Boys or that The Boys is better than Invincible. I don't really care about that debate because I love both series. I'm just saying that this was not what I expected to happen at all. Even more so when you compare the 35 minutes that came before the ending, which were pretty fun and light-hearted. But I think that juxtaposition just made the ending even more impactful. I was watching this episode alongside my girlfriend, and her exact words after the credits rolled were, "Well, you can tell this is written by the same guy who wrote The Walking Dead." And she's right. I mean, not many other writers would even attempt to kill this many characters, especially in the first episode, but it worked. The reason as to why Omni-Man did what he did is revealed in the final episode of the show, and the mystery behind his horrific actions is something which kept me hooked throughout the entire season. I do have to admit that part of me was expecting this mystery to be dragged out for years, so I'm glad this was resolved at the end of season 1 as opposed to 5 seasons later. Whilst I have often complained about the slow pacing on Robert Kirkman's other comic adapted television show The Walking Dead, Invincible moves along at a breakneck speed. It might prove to be too quick for some, but I'm all for it. It reminded me of how The Mandalorian is structured with its villain of the week type setup. Every episode of The Mandalorian is like its own mini adventure, and the same goes for Invincible. In most of the episodes, Mark comes up against some kind of new crazy antagonist before them doing the same thing in the next installment. Now, I understand that this might not be everyone's cup of tea, but personally I found this approach rather refreshing. And speaking of things that might not be everyone's cup of tea, it's worth pointing out that there is a lot of weird shit in Invincible that just isn't explained. Whereas The Boys goes out of its way to explain how soups came to be, all manner and kinds of super-powered crazy people and monsters just pop up all over the place in Invincible, and you're just expected to go with it. It's a bit similar to how One Punch Man's universe is just full of all kinds of oddities and all kinds of weird monsters and heroes. In Invincible's second episode, aliens from another dimension appear through portals and attack the city. No explanation as to why they're there, they just are. There's a villain called Machine Head who has, well, a machine head, and his dialogue is all auto-tuned like some kind of T-Pain song because why the hell not? There are also kaijus, dragons, and a dude who turns people into zombie-like robots. Oh, and there's Martians as well who end up being decimated by some weird legion of brain squid things. Invincible's universe is just full of cocky heroes and insane villains, and I mean it must really suck to be a civilian because they seem to be under attack nearly every week. Anyway, if that doesn't sound like something you can get your head around, then you might have trouble enjoying this show. I, however, loved it. It helps that the characters in Invincible are fantastic. The original Guardians of the Globe team were all likeable, despite most of them being copies of heroes already established by DC or Marvel, and I have to admit I was a bit worried that I wouldn't like the new heroes as much as I did those who died in the first episode, but in fact I actually ended up liking the new ones more. Atom Eve is a bit like Wanda in that she can manipulate matter. Rexplode seemed like a complete dick when he was first introduced, but he actually becomes pretty cool by the end of the show and actually progresses as a character. Duplicate can make copies of herself, which are normally always brutally murdered, but it's still an awesome power to have. Monster Girl is a 25-year-old girl stuck in the body of a 10-year-old who can transform into a giant troll-like monster, but when she does, she de-ages a week when she transforms back. So yeah, I don't even know how Kirkman came up with that concept, but she rocks. And Robot has a storyline which is completely out of left field, in which it's revealed that instead of being a sentient robot, he's actually a drone being controlled by a severely handicapped and disabled, disfigured guy, and this dude then uploads his brain into a copy of Rexplode that he created whilst being assisted by another pair of clones. And the clones, by the way, are hilarious, but yeah, look, I did tell you this show was weird, okay? And even though the robot storyline was completely fucking bonkers, it still had a lot of heart and was actually quite moving for a story that was about a human blob. Of course, Omniman and Mark are the stars of the show, but the supporting cast is wonderful. And yes, that even includes Amber, who I'm mentioning because everyone on the internet seems to hate her for some reason, but I liked her, so there you go. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong and that I'm a dickhead in the comments below. Omni-Man tries to keep up his nice guy facade in front of his family throughout the season, however as the show progresses the cracks begin to form, and I was on edge whenever I saw him, especially considering what I'd already seen him do during the opening episode. And his general disdain for humanity only becomes more and more apparent with each passing installment. One moment that sticks out to me is when he's on vacation in, I believe, Italy, and a dragon appears in the background wreaking havoc because, as I said, these type of things just happen in this universe, and Omni-Man just doesn't do anything about it. His wife Debbie asks him to help and he just says, look, I'm on vacation, let Cecil deal with it. And Cecil is this kind of Nick Fury type of character. Omni-Man does not give a shit. He's supposed to be a hero, but he'd rather let people die than have his vacation disrupted. Another moment of dialogue from Omni-Man that sticks in my mind is when Mark questions him if he ever loved his mother, to which he replies, I do love your mother, but she's more like a pet to me. A pet? A fucking pet? Wow, I'm not really sure there's anything worse that you could say about your significant other. Omni-Man doesn't see his wife Debbie as an equal. Instead, she's a pet, a source of amusement, something that is beneath him. I mean, bloody hell, I'd rather my girlfriend say that she thought I was a CUNT than say she saw me as a pet. One of the most despicable things about Omni-Man is that he lied for so long about his true nature. He spent 2 decades on Earth lying to his wife and lying to his son, pretending to be this caring, loving father, when in fact he was just there to weaken and eventually take over the planet. He even goes on to say to Mark that in the grand scheme of things, Mark's mother's life is insignificant. Damn, that's ice cold. Also, the train scene. The train scene, man. I mean, bloody hell, that was insane. Uses his son as a human battering ram, with Mark having to see hundreds of people die but be powerless to do anything about it. I mean, wow. After episode 1, I wondered how on earth Invincible would be able to top that episode's ending, but it continues to push the boundaries. As of recording this video, I haven't read the Invincible comics, so I may be wrong. But I think there may still be hope for Omni-Man despite him being an evil bastard. Invincible did manage to get through to him after taking one head of a beating, with Omni-Man even shedding a tear as he left Earth. Before he left the planet, Omni-Man went on a rant explaining to Mark that because their species live for thousands of years, fighting for humanity is pointless because everyone Mark cares for will die. He questions Mark, what will you have in 500 years time, to which Mark replies, I'll have you, Dad. Sorry, I've suddenly developed hay fever, my eyes are watering, I swear I'm not crying. In all seriousness, it's a beautiful moment. Steven Yeun's delivery is on point as it is throughout the entire show, and J.K. Simmons was perfectly cast as Omni-Man. I haven't really said too much about Invincible himself, and well, it's just kind of impossible not to like him. His character makes quips like Peter Parker, and he takes a beating like Matt Murdock. He fails at nearly every attempt at being a hero, and even when he does succeed, such as the Mars mission, he inadvertently doomed the Martian race by letting those weird brain slug creatures connect with a human, something the Martians said must not happen. He's a complete amateur, but you have to admire his spirit and his determination. His dad wrecks him in the final battle, but he still doesn't throw in the towel. And I like that as of now, Mark just kind of sucks at being a hero. I mean, in most superhero origin stories, the hero gets their powers and they go on to defeat the bad guy pretty quickly. But come the end of the season, Mark loses. I think this will just make it all the much more sweeter when Mark does overcome Omni-Man in the future, presuming that is the route the story is going to take. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't read the comics. I have to admit, I did find the whole scenario of Mark being a high school kid struggling to manage school, a job, as well as a secret identity to be a bit cliche. But hey, this show takes inspirations from all kinds of superhero media, so of course some of it's going to feel familiar. Like I already said, Invincible reminds me a lot of Peter Parker. The Guardians of the Globe could be compared to any number of superhero teams. And Invincible's father, Omni-Man, and the race he belongs to, the Viltrumites, reminded me of the Saiyans from Dragon Ball Z. There are a lot of borrowed ideas on this show and influences from other shows on here, however they are combined with new and fresh ideas that make it worth watching. So yeah, that's about all I want to say really. I mean, I'm sure there's things that I have forgot to mention, but I don't want this video to be too in-depth. I don't want it to go on forever and cover, every nook and cranny about the entire season. Just want it to be a summary of my feelings, and all I can say is this: watch Invincible. It's brilliant. I have very little complaints about it, which for me is a pretty rare occurrence, and yeah, I can't wait to season 2, and I'll probably review it on this channel when it comes out. No promises, but I would like to review it when it comes out on a week-by-week basis, and when season 2 comes out. So let me know your thoughts below. Did you like Invincible? Have you watched it? Are you planning on watching it? Did you watch it and, did you dislike it? And did you like this video? And is there any other shows you want me to cover? Let me know. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Take care.